In 2021, archaeologists broke through a sealed wall at Luxor Temple and found 13 skeletons, all female, all between 12 and 16 years old, all with their hands bound behind their backs. But that is not even the worst part. These girls had been buried alive, entombed in the temple foundations while they were still breathing. And this was not some random tragedy. This was systematic. This was intentional. This was the least horrifying thing that happened to Egypt's temple virgins. I am about to show you 3 things that will change how you see ancient Egypt forever. First, the brutal selection process that ripped girls as young as 6 from their families and the purity tests that killed dozens before they ever reached the temples. Second, the forbidden rituals archaeologists discovered in a hidden chamber in 2019 that prove these were not honored priestesses. They were victims. And third, the archaeological evidence from CT scans and toxicology reports that reveals what these priests really did behind temple walls. Hit that subscribe button right now because by the end of this video, you will understand why historians spent centuries trying to bury this story. But first, forget everything you think you know about ancient Egypt. When you picture ancient Egypt, you probably think of Cleopatra's beauty, golden pyramids, maybe some mummies. But here is what they do not teach you in school. Egyptian temples were not just religious buildings. They were economic empires controlling over 20% of Egypt's entire wealth. We are talking agricultural land, gold mines, trading operations. The priests who ran these temples had more power than most nobility. They answered to no one except Pharaoh and sometimes not even him. At the center of this power structure was a position called God's Wife of Amun, temple virgins who supposedly represented the ultimate purity, the bridge between humanity and the divine. Noble families once competed to have their daughters chosen, believing it the highest honor in Egypt. That was the official story. But between 2015 and 2023, excavations changed everything. Ground-penetrating radar revealed sealed chambers unopened for 3,000 years. CT scans exposed new details in mummified remains, and translation AI uncovered hieroglyphs long mistranslated. What emerged was not divine service but systematic abuse, torture, and murder hidden within temples once deemed sacred. Official records praised these girls as cherished and elevated, but the bodies told another story. Bones and chemical traces do not lie. It began with the selection process that stole their childhoods. Imagine being a nobleman in ancient Thebes with 3 young daughters. One morning, priests arrive with guards to inspect them. Refusal means death, your bloodline erased. Inscriptions at Karnak Temple describe the chosen as pure, untouched by corruption. Code for girls aged 6 to 10, young enough to be molded and controlled. Medical papyri detail invasive examinations performed publicly to verify virginity. These were not gentle rituals but violations. The priests took dozens of girls each year, competing to supply their temples. Many did not survive selection. A 2017 study near Karnak uncovered 47 female child burials, all aged 6 to 12, showing signs of violent death during the same reign. These were not plague victims. Trauma patterns revealed systematic abuse. Families who resisted vanished from official records, their homes, names, and properties erased. The message was absolute: give up your daughters or lose everything. Those taken were renamed and confined within temple walls, told they were honored brides of the gods. But training was a slow breaking of body and mind. In 2018, scans of a mummy labeled God's Wife of Amun exposed 17 healed fractures, evidence of sustained abuse. 12 similar mummies showed identical signs: starvation, vitamin deficiency, and stunted growth. Temple records described a purification diet: watered beer, thin bread, and rare fish, barely 800 calories a day. Weakness was the goal. Windowless cells, constant ritual noise, and enforced isolation ensured total control. Tissue analysis revealed blue lotus and mandrake alkaloids, psychoactive drugs inducing hallucination and compliance. The priests called it divine preparation. In truth, they drugged and broke these children until obedience replaced humanity. Some tried to escape. One girl's bound wrists still bear scars. By 13, she was dead. Another lost voice buried beneath the lie of holiness. They were divine property, and once the priests broke them completely, the true purpose began. Everything before, selection, starvation, drugs, isolation, was only preparation for what the priests truly wanted. In 2019, restoration workers at Luxor Temple uncovered a sealed chamber behind a plastered wall hidden for 2,000 years. Its carvings depicted the so-called sacred marriage ceremonies. They were not marriages. They were ritualized assaults. Priests claimed they were not acting as men but as vessels of the divine, convincing drugged, starved children that the gods willed their suffering. This was no isolated act. Papyrus archives from Karnak mention more than 40 of these ceremonies each year at a single complex. Multiply that by Egypt's major temples, Luxor, Dendera, Abydos, Heliopolis, and it becomes thousands across centuries. The priests answered to no authority. Temple grounds were legally untouchable, even to the pharaoh's guards. The gods' wives had no advocates, no voice, no escape. Who could accuse the gods themselves? Some girls became pregnant. Examination of mummies revealed at least 3 had given birth, one as young as 14, yet temple records listed no infants. The truth emerged in 2020 when radar scans near temple walls uncovered clusters of infant remains, buried secretly without ceremony. When these forced unions produced children, the babies vanished. This was not faith. It was domination wrapped in sanctity, granting priests total control over the powerless. And for those who resisted or failed to please the gods, there was one last horror. The 13 skeletons found at Karnak were not buried near the temple. They were buried within it. Their bound hands, clawed fingers, and twisted spines told the same story. They were entombed alive, conscious, left to die in darkness. Ancient texts describing eternal guardians, human sacrifices sealed into foundations, had long been dismissed as myth. The 2021 excavation proved it real. Their only crime was defiance or inconvenient truth. Those who resisted, became pregnant, or tried to speak were erased, buried in the walls that confined them. The rest lived out their lives imprisoned in ceremony. Temple records show gods' wives remained property until death, 40 or 50 years of ritual servitude behind sacred walls. The system lasted over 1,500 years, ending only under Roman oversight. Cleopatra VII tried to expose it, demanding audits and reforms. The priesthood revolted, siding with Rome to preserve their secrets. After her death, they destroyed the evidence, plastered over walls, burned papyri, and rewrote translations, burying the truth once again beneath the illusion of holiness. They almost succeeded, but they could not erase bones. They could not erase chemical traces in mummified tissue. They could not erase the foundations they had built on buried bodies. The evidence survived, and now finally the truth is coming out. Conservative estimates suggest between 50 and 70,000 girls went through this system across Egyptian history, 70,000 stolen childhoods, 70,000 victims whose suffering was called sacred. And here is the uncomfortable modern reality. Many Egyptian authorities resist new excavations in temple sacred areas. They cite cultural preservation, religious respect, and tourism concerns, but some archaeologists believe there is another reason: protecting Egypt's national image from truths that are harder to market than golden masks and pyramid mysteries. This was not unique to Egypt. Similar patterns are now being uncovered in Mayan temple complexes, Greek oracle sites, and ancient Mesopotamian ziggurats. Wherever religious authorities had unchecked power and divine justification, we are finding evidence of systematic abuse. The temples still stand, monuments to architectural genius and cultural achievement, but they are also crime scenes, burial grounds for victims whose names were erased, whose suffering was called holy, whose abuse was called love. Here is my question for you. Should archaeologists push for complete excavation of these sites, expose the full truth, regardless of who it offends, or should some secrets stay buried out of respect for modern cultural identity? Comment your answer below. There is no easy answer, but this conversation matters because sometimes the gods men created were just masks for monsters, and the scariest part, we are still finding the bodies. If this kind of dark history fascinates you, next week I am covering the Aztec priesthoods, flower wars, and what they really did with captured children. Subscribe so you do not miss it.